Hey, what's going on, everybody? This is Ethan Hall with the Patriot Picture. I'm going to start off today's podcast by just talking a little bit about, what's been going on and letting you know kind of the future direction I plan to take with all this stuff. So I'm actually going to be working on professionalism and getting like kind of a branding type deal. So I'm going to be having a logo design and just try to get everything more enjoyable and presentable. I'm also going to be trying to take this into a more fun direction. I'm going to be talking about a lot of hot button issues, but that doesn't mean we can't have fun with it. So I'm going to be trying to, make these a little bit lighter and a little bit more entertaining, especially for like, people my age that want to watch something and be like, yeah, that's kind of funny, but also like I want people to take something from what I say because I am pretty passionate and I try to educate myself as best I can on these issues. So today I'm going to be having kind of a simple topic today. I'm going to be talking about what makes a great president and compared to the president we have now because quite frankly I think everyone can I feel like most people are starting to recognize that Biden's presidency is kind of a dumpster fire. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to talk about presidents of the past and what made them great compared to, what makes Biden so incredibly terrible. In my opinion, I mean, I'm going to say disclaimer. Um, I'm just going to be talking about what Biden has done. I understand people getting offended and people really like Biden. Some people really do. That's fine. I'm just going to be talking about purely what he has done. So all the things that I say are going to be completely and truthfully factual. And some of the things I'm going to say are going to be my interpretation of those things. But every line I read, I'm going to be just fact after fact. So I personally, I will say I am biased because I do think Biden is the worst president in U.S. history. But let's go ahead and get started. I actually took some notes and wrote some stuff down about other presidents that I thought was cool and major accomplishments. I'm going to be comparing them to presidents kind of older, and then I'm going to take it back to a little bit more modern because I do understand the idea of you can't compare modern times to past times. So I'm just gonna take two presidents from kind of far off, and then try to wrap it into a couple more modern presidents and explain why even still Biden is still compared to modern times and just a terrible president. So starting off, I'm going to talk about Teddy Roosevelt. What made Teddy Roosevelt great? Teddy Roosevelt, he first of all, he made conservation, which I think is something everyone can agree on, a federal issue. He made the first ever national park, and he made conservation like a big deal. People weren't really talking about, our environment as much as they were until after Teddy Roosevelt. Um, yeah, he also was awarded the Medal of Honor, which is pretty cool. I mean, you have to be at least somewhat, respectable to live to win such a esteemed prize and award like that. He actually put in place the first adulteration laws in U.S. history. So, I mean, I don't know, I know there's a bunch of people that are trying to speak out for weird stuff like pedophilia, but I think 90% of people can agree that that's a great thing. Adulteration laws are terrible, and I think that adulteration is obviously horrible. So those laws are a great thing. And the Panama Canal, that's actually my favorite thing he did was the Panama Canal. I think that was an extraordinary accomplishment and such a feat of American architecture and just a lot of people working together. And I think that's an amazing accomplishment. He facilitated the Panama Canal. My actually great grandpa worked on the Panama Canal, so that's kind of something a little neat, personal. Um, he Oh yeah, he destroyed the beef trust. I don't know if you guys know about the meatpacking industry back in the day, but the meatpacking industry, they had to go by certain ramifications, like they had to make weight, and that means like if a meat can had to be 1 pound, they would sometimes sweep the floor and then put the dust and whatever they sweep up on top of the meat if they were off weight or something. If people would lose fingers, sometimes people would get fingers in their meat because they just left it in there to make weight. And he completely just did away with that and made it he made them hold up to what they had to do. He just did a lot of things for that in the food industry. he curbed monopolies. That's probably the one thing most people do take from Roosevelt is he curbed monopolies, which is just awesome. So I'm setting the bar pretty high as far as what I think makes a great president. But I'm just going to keep going down the line and talking about all these things that what really makes a president great, and then just circle it all back to what we got going on now. So I'm obviously going to talk about Lincoln. So Lincoln, he's my favorite president, and I think he did a lot of things that people don't even really know about. But let's hit the big one first. The Emancipation Proclamation, which led to the abolition of slavery. Probably, if not the greatest, one of the greatest acts in U.S. history and things past. Two, not a lot of people know about this. Abraham Lincoln established the banking system, the U.S. banking system. So that's what would we do without the banks right now? Can you imagine? So he just completely created kind of this whole world that we live in now, just with all the things that he did so long ago, still super relevant for today. He did the Homestead Act, which the Homestead Act pretty much back then, the poor people couldn't ever get land. Like it was hard for people to get land. Working your way up in America was not something that was common. It was just the rich were rich and the poor were poor. Well, he kind of established really the middle class, whereas people could start owning land and work their way up a little bit. And then he established the first Department of Agriculture in the U.S., which is still pretty relevant for today. I'm going to move on. I feel like a lot of people know about him, Abraham Lincoln, and all the great things he did. But the next president I'm going to talk about is a controversial one now. It used to be, he was just a great president, but now that Republicans are such under attack, everyone wants to hate on this next guy that I'm going to be talking about, which is Ronald Reagan. And Ronald Reagan was a great president. I don't really care if you're as far left as can be. He did amazing things, and you can't tell me he didn't. But let's see. Let's just talk about some of his accomplishments. And like I said, I'm just reading facts, and I'm going to all circle it back to Biden. First thing he did, first accomplishment that I'm going to read off is he had the largest electoral college victory in U.S. history. That's something you have to recognize. The largest electoral college vote in U.S. history. That's an accomplishment. That's insane. Also, he conquered the Cold War. The Cold War was building and building, and people were freaking out. And then Reagan came along, completely cut ties. The Berlin Wall got knocked down. All these terrible things that came about the Cold War, he squandered. So that's something awesome. The Reaganomics era. I think the Reaganomics era was probably the greatest era in U.S. history. I think this is how I look at it. A lot of people say that Reagan's economics were good in the short run and bad for the long run. I disagree with that completely because if you take a time like the 80s, so think about this. Internet's coming out, all this brand new, huge, the first ever ginormous, advanced technological boom with, internet and computer software and all this stuff and video games, all this crazy stuff going on. He could have, that's a lot to handle. That's a lot for a society to handle happening at once. And what does the government do about all this new platform? When there's something so brand new introduced to the United States, the government kind of gets itself in a flop and don't know what to do. I think Reagan had a very good chance of ruining this country if he what if he put regulations on certain technology like what China does and everything. But he took the 80s and made it he just thrived off of 80s technology and kept pushing for it and took the technology and new type of era we were in and just ran with it. I think Reagan for that alone makes him a top 5 president. I'm going to get into the next president before I talk about Joe Biden. Like I said, I'm trying to get a little bit more modern presidents. I talked about Roosevelt and Lincoln, now Reagan, and I'm going to talk about Jimmy Carter. Jimmy Carter, I don't like. I don't like Jimmy Carter that much. But as bad as I think Jimmy Carter was, Biden makes me think maybe he'd be a better president. And even though he's like 90, I still maybe think maybe I don't know. But Jimmy Carter, some of the things he did, and I wasn't super familiar with Jimmy Carter until like last few days. I've been researching it a little bit, but I'm going to go ahead and read off some of the things Jimmy Carter did, and not all these things are going to be good. Which for the other three, I just exclusively did, things that I thought were good traits. But for Jimmy Carter, he had a pretty rocky presidency, but even he, as we'll find out, or as I'll explain, was leaps and bounds beyond what this presidency has done. All right, Jimmy Carter. He established the Department of Energy. That's a great thing. I'm not against that. The Department of Energy, like I'm an environmentalist, I will say that. I think clean energy is a path to go on. The U.S. Department of Education, now kids my age hate that, but I think he did a good job establishing, kind of the groundwork for how modern education is. And the peace treaty of Egypt and Israel, that was a big one. That was a big thing. So much unnecessary violence went on between Israel and Egypt, and he kind of facilitated that and squandered it a little bit. So I think that is another good thing of his presidency. This is actually, the next thing I'm going to say is very controversial. This is rated actually as like a good thing, but I'm going to say I'm not a fan of this policy. He gave the Panama Canal to Panama, which a lot of people are going to say, well, shouldn't the Panama Canal go to Panama? Well, we built it, so why would they gain control of something that we were making revenue off of? And we should be proud of that. We should be proud of the Panama Canal, but he just gave it away to appease Panama, which I think was kind of, I didn't like, that's not a good policy. But what's done is done. It's not that big of a deal. I mean, it's not like a huge blow to someone's presidency. I just think it was kind of an accomplishment that we made, and he kind of took it and made it theirs. But that's just me. Now let's talk about Joe Biden. Joe Biden has been president for only 8 months. And I'm just going to read you 8 things that he's already done that have just put this country, further and further. I'm going to ask everybody, what do you think makes a good president? I've been giving you all this information of, great presidential accomplishments and a couple that weren't so great, but what I think makes a great president. But I'll give you a definition for me. Am I happier now than I was then? And I wasn't alive for all these people, but I still see some of the benefits from said policies in the past. But I can tell you right now, 3 years ago, I was way happier. And I think we've just gotten further and further and further down this divisive hole, and Joe Biden is making it worse and worse and worse. So, ask yourselves, are you happier now? Because I don't know if anybody's happier now than they were, a few years ago. But let's go ahead and talk about what Joe Biden has done in the 8 months. Afghan soldiers left for dead. Those Afghan soldiers, the several soldiers that lost their lives through this terrible evacuation plan that he did, that's on him. That is on his administration. So already, that one hits more personal for me. I think that's probably the worst thing he's done, one of at least, but he's done, the list goes on. He's got a whopping resume here. Unemployment, 2%, up 2%. So in Trump presidency, it was 3.5. Now it's 5.5. And I think at one point Trump had it at 3.2, which is record low. But now it's at 5.5%. So hats off to you, Biden. Number 3, the vax mandate. Don't get me started on the vaccine mandate. I think that is so Marxist. It is so communistic. and ridiculous. And another thing that I noticed the other day, all these places have, vaccine mask required per federal law. I feel like you can sue those places because it's not a federal law, it's a mandate. I don't think a lot of people understand the difference between a mandate and a law, but don't let anybody ever tell you that it's federal law to wear a mask. That is so wrong. It's a mandate. And if they don't know the difference, then that's on them. Get themselves educated before they tell people how to live their lives. So, that was a rant. $83 billion worth of equipment left for terrorists. I'm just going to go on to the next one. I'm going to just keep reading them off. This is getting ridiculous. How about the entire idea of negotiating with terrorists? Think we need to say much about that? He negotiated with terrorists. Great. I wrote down signs of dementia. Why? I mean, he lost his way on his way to the White House, and there's a video of that. So that is a fact. He did lose his way, and he does have some signs of dementia. That is kind of a fact, but I forgot that I wrote that. The open border policy. We've had so many criminals come in through the open border policy. So dumb. Like, what is he trying to prove? We can't even employ the workers we have here. What do you think we're going to make a better home for them, for the people, for the refugees trying to escape another country when our country can't even get along or get any jobs or get anybody to work at all? Oh, and the inflation and gas prices. Yeah, I think we all love filling up our gas $2 more than it was. My tank used to be $26 and now it's $50. Ridiculous. I also didn't write this down, but crime rate is up substantially, like absolutely astronomically. Seattle, I think, had a 400% increase in crime, but that's because they defunded the police. So yeah, so Joe Biden, clearly not a good president. He's not a good fit for the country. Think whatever you want. I honestly don't mind if you like Joe Biden, but don't ask me to explain myself why I don't. If you're going to get mad that I don't like Joe Biden, this has nothing to do with me liking Trump or anything. It just means I don't like Joe Biden. Don't ever ask me to explain why I don't like Joe Biden. If you know anything at all, if you're like conscious during what's going on in this country, you should be able to understand why someone might not be so inclined to say they like Joe Biden. So to answer the whole point of the podcast, is Joe Biden a great president? No, he's probably the worst in history. All right, like, subscribe, share this video with everybody. Thanks for watching, and have a great one, guys. Bye.